Wow.
I feel like we've been in an intensive conference.
I know, right? That's exactly what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. Wow, the information.
Yeah.
Is what you were saying. When you think of 1 in 10 males and 1 in 30 women, females, have
Mhm.
G6PD deficiency, that is not rare.
No, it's not.
In
It's
the Black community, they're just talking about in the Black community. They're not talking about the other communities that Sterling touched upon.
wow. So
And they're only
that's
talking
not rare.
about the indigenous Black community here in the United States. They're
So
not even
we
talking about Africa.
so we all know people with it then.
We do.
We know people that have it and more than likely don't know they have it and
No,
that are suffering from it because they are eating things, taking medication, and don't know that that stuff is not that doesn't go with their genetics.
no, it doesn't. A diet that's rich in, I mean, I know so many vegans, beans are a staple.
Hmm.
And yet, even my husband and I, we've talked many times and we said, well, they're not healthy. What could be going on that they're not healthy?
Hmm.
And yet they're eating organic and they're eating a meat free diet.
Right?
This could be the missing link.
That could be the missing link.
Could be the missing
Wow.
link. And now we know that they're going to release the hydroxychloroquine. Chloroquine again in Nigeria has been banned for years. What, 14 to 15 years has been banned. Now they say that the parasites built up a resistance. That's the new thing. But before they banned it because it killed so many of the Africans over there, Nigerians.
Hmm. But you would think they know why they banned it. So why would they just tell the world why you banned it? Right? We banned it for this reason. It may work for others, and it may it it probably does work very well for some portions of the population. They should get it. It should be
Those that don't
available to
have
them.
G6PD deficiency.
Right,
So
but
you
not
need to be tight. It's a
right,
simple blood test.
right. And
Whole blood,
then
take a blood test.
right, and then there needs to be treatment for people with GPD deficiency.
Right. So let's see what do we know? You and I read an article, Dr. Bronstein, I think that's his name,
Mm-hmm.
of his protocol.
Right.
We can have iodine. That seems to work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Prince of Wales, Charles, he got better with Ayurvedic uh, um, natural medicines.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some homeopathy therapies. There are other things that we can do. But I think the main thing for us is to prevent a crisis. And they call it G6PD crisis because that's what I was in, deficiency
Mm-hmm.
crisis. And how do you do that? You have to avoid the foods that can create that crisis.
Mm.
So
Wow.
what does that tell us about us, though? We need to look, even if you don't have this deficiency, maybe you carry the gene. Maybe you haven't turned on and expressed the deficiency yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to really educate ourselves and go back. What is the best diet for us?
Right.
We know, even with breast cancer, for myself, I had people tell me, well, you need a little soy. You know, soy can be good. A little bit can be good. And I'm thinking, how can that be? When Asian women have a high rate of breast cancer, and what's the staple in their diet? Soy.
Right. And
But
it ain't nearly what we eat. I mean, they
no,
didn't eat nearly like we took the soy and flew to the moon with it in this country. They
that's
didn't
right.
eat that kind of soy.
That's right. Theirs is more fermented. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what they were telling me. Well, you can have fermented versions of soy. I said, I have G6PD deficiency. I can't have soy at all.
Hmm.
Even if I, could eat it, I'm not eating it. Fermented foods are not good for people with G6PD deficiency.
Oh, so that's another thing with Sabi. He says don't eat the ferment. Isn't he the one? I'm pretty sure he's the one that said don't eat fermented foods.
We
Pretty
really have,
sure he's the one that said it.
you and
I
I
have to
need to
double
look at
check
that.
that, but I'm pretty sure. He said don't eat
And he said, what did he say was the only bean type food we could eat? Chickpeas.
chickpeas. Yep.
That's, chickpeas are all that someone with G6PD deficiency can eat. They'll tell you, oh, you just have to avoid fava beans. No, you have to avoid all beans and legumes. You
Because
can't
of
eat
the, and
them.
he said it was because of the starch. And with this G6PD deficiency, it's a deficiency of how you metabolize
That's right.
sugar and carbs.
That's right. So when we look at, we wonder, and you have a huge medical establishment telling you, we don't know why blacks have a higher rate of diabetes and heart disease
High
and the
blood pressure. She said something
high
about it
blood
being
pressure.
linked to
That's
high
right.
blood pressure.
Right. High blood
Ha-
pressure or and cancers. Why
ha-
they have such a fatal result when they get cancer. Could this be the missing link?
You know what, Sheila? G6PD deficiency is one thing, right?
Yeah,
And I didn't even know it exists. What else is out there about our genetics? What else is out there that doesn't work for us, that wasn't in our indigenous diets?
that's right.
Medicines, vaccines, stuff that our ancestors never did, that's not clearly not working for us. But the people who have access to that data just look at it and say, you know, we don't know why.
I mean, do we have to look at um when we look at our data, and since so many of us are mixed with, I know for me, I have I think 6 or 7 different countries represented in Africa. So do we have to look at those different countries and look at the diets of those countries? Like I was telling you the other day about the Benin. I know I have Benin in me,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never been able to tolerate dairy. No matter how much I like it, I can't tolerate it. My dad can't tolerate it. So that's one component that I'm looking at that I
Mm-hmm.
can't tolerate. Could it be the Nigerian in me contributed to the G6PD deficiency? That gene was expressed in my ancestors. That's another part of me. I'm wondering just how many parts do we need to look at?
Right, right. Well, and we have to be, I feel like when it comes to our health, we have to be investigators,
Yes,
right? Like you're investigating yourself and you're investigating your family too. Because if you're a woman, we feed our families. We're the ones who orchestrate the health for our whole family, our children, our husband. So part of our job, I feel like, and we're so busy now, right? Like,
right.
we live these busy lifestyles. But this is so big. This is so significant that whether or not you can even continue on with your lifestyle, or whether or not your children are going to thrive, whether or not your husband will live a long life, right? You see how a lot of men die of like prostate cancer and all this other stuff. And it's stuff that maybe if we did some research on it, learned ourselves. Like one of the things Sterling said when you asked her about how she came to be doing what she's doing now, which is helping other people, she did that by learning herself,
Exactly.
right? It was her own experience. Then she wanted to learn more about it, and she mastered herself. And in so doing, she's able now to help strangers.
It's true. I mean, that's been my journey.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I've been through is for my children
Right.
because I had prayed so much. What is wrong with my child? It's precocious anemia. I can't get a grip on it. She Her main staple of food, beans, beans, and more beans. Last year she comes home, she passes out, cracks a tooth, just passes out on the floor, hits the hard tile and cracks her tooth. I
Mm-hmm.
take her in to see the hematologist, and he's looking at me. He says, well, I don't know. Maybe she needs a blood transfusion. And I've learned to follow my instincts after what's happened to Temple. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
need to, I need to learn a little more, find out a little more.
Right.
And it took my illness for me to upload my raw data so Sterling could look at it. And I mean, I got bam, 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 plus, 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 down G6PD SNP panels. And I go in and I get her report because all of my children have been tested. I get her report, I get Lou's and Temple's. There it is, bam. Temple has it. My Leah has it. Lou didn't get it. She's a twin. Amazing.
Wow.
So she won't be passing on that expression. But those two have it, and I'm all over it. So we need to be more investigative. We are the patient.
Mm-hmm.
We are in control of this body because this is our temple, and we should not allow a doctor just to tell us anything.
Right.
If a doctor's not willing to do the work, we don't need to be there.
Right. Right. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with researching. If the doctor tells you you have X, Y, and Z, go
Mm-hmm.
home and research everything you can find about it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at
And
all.
like I said earlier, right? The doctor, whatever he finds is wrong with you is based on what you told him.
Right.
So what does that tell you about your role in figuring out what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
That should actually be a partnership, not you going to somebody that you see as God to tell you what's wrong with you, to write you a prescription.
No.
Like you should be an active part of that, and doctors are going to have to come around. They're not trained for that active partnership, but you cannot hear, like, if what's wrong with me has to come from me. I have to tell you what's
Right.
wrong with me so you can figure it out. How isn't this an active partnership? Let's think logically.
That's right. And I have a right to be in charge of what's happening with my body.
Right.
And I don't need anyone telling me, well, you've got a poor diet, you don't exercise, as like Judy Mikovich said. Now, I hadn't even talked about that with you, anyone else. I know I can't exercise.
Hmm.
I build up with the lactic acid. My mitochondrial cells start diminishing, like she was talking about.
Wow.
The retroviruses start doing this, churning. And then they create a cytostorm in my body.
Wow.
So it's not something I can do. But also, when you look at me, I also have McArdle's disease, which is a white European condition. I got both imprints from my parents. Both of my parents carry the trait. Bam, there it is. So I've got all of these conditions, but I said that to say this. Our genetics, they represent 25% of what could happen to us. So what about the other 75%? How can we empower ourselves and take our health back?
Right.
Our bodies are so fearfully and wonderfully made. I mean, I thank God every day. Every day I get up, I wake up and say, oh, thank you, Lord. No matter what's going to happen today, I've made it through another day to see another day. Because this body, as sick as the conditions have been, it is healing itself from the inside out.
Right. Right.
And we have the ability to do that by how we eat,
Right.
what we do, even teas and herbs. We need to look at food clearly as medicine.
Right. Right. And our thoughts too.
Yeah,
Thoughts, feelings, behaviors,
yeah,
right? All of that factors into our health,
it
holistically
is very
speaking.
much so.
You know, um, you know what it reminds me of? Our hair, right? Because
Yeah,
you can have five Black women in the family, all same genetics, and all of our hair is unique.
that's right. It's true because I've got three, and you could come from the same two parents,
Yep,
and the grade is so different.
yep. And so what works on one's hair will
Will
not
not work
work
for
on the
me.
other one's hair, and you got to figure out that head of hair,
That's
you know?
right.
And it's the same with our bodies. Right. And I think that's it. Like that is what's going on with our bodies. We cannot be treated like a herd.
Well, it's like my mother told me one time. She said, listen, you remember something. When you get ready to have children, no two will be the same. While you can have the same morals, like, praising God, going to church, respect, courtesy. You can't raise those two people the same, three or four. You have to look at the individual,
My
look
mom
at the
said that.
personality, and raise that child according to who that child is. So we have our unique imprints.
Right.
And I've been thinking about that more and more. I talk to my mother like 5, 10 times a day. But I was telling her that. She said, "See, I told you." I said, "Yeah." I
Oh, yeah.
experienced it raising my kids,
Mhm.
but it made me think about how unique we are. So how you gonna treat us all the same? Give us all the same medication. Give us all the same protocol.
You know what though? That's a level of maturity, right? Because when you're a kid, we used to measure potato chips. Like,
That's
we want to
right.
make sure everybody got the exact, oh, you gave her one more potato chip.
That's right. One more than me.
So when my mom was raising us, I remember thinking, well, that's not fair. You didn't let me do that, or you didn't
That's
say that
right.
to me, or whatever. But then you mature to the point where you realize that one size doesn't fit all with parenting. It doesn't fit all with diet. It doesn't
Nope.
fit all with healing. It doesn't fit all with medicine. One size does not fit all, even for an apple, for the sun,
That's
right?
right.
One size, I could go out there and stand in the sun for 5 hours and never burn. Somebody else go out there for 20 minutes and they're burnt up. You know what I mean? So one size does not fit all.
It's like my
And
girls tell me all the time, but they used to tell me all the time, well, why she got that punishment and it was so harsh for her, not for me, because they would gang up on me.
right.
And I would say, okay, well, if you want it, you can go have that one too. No, I don't want that one. I said, because she's different, and that's all I need to tell you.
Right.
I need to leave it like that because I was always so busy.
Right.
Why do you spoil Temple so much? I said, because he's not going to live the life you're living. So I
Right.
am harder on you. And I was. Now, I wasn't harder, but I expected more from the girls.
Right.
They had the intelligence to go forward. But even with their diets, I am seeing they need different things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You, you try. I always cook 2 meals because Temple had such a specialized diet, and then I'd have a family meal. So I've always done that. I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. Their dad does the cooking,
Mm-hmm.
and the girls can help too now. But even when you look at that in the same family,
Right. So the kitchen is like the healing center of the household.
it
Right.
really is when you think about it. And you reminded me of something. I never forget, I had this Dutch film crew come to my house one time, and they were shocked when they came into my kitchen and saw all of the things that I did for my kids, for myself, and how I cooked and all the natural things. And I guess, I don't know if it was a shock because some people think if you're Black, you don't know how to do these things. And yet, here we are, so many of us do. Or they couldn't believe I was talking about food as the healing center for my children
Mm-hmm.
and for their health. And there it is. It's always been that way.
Always been, yep.
And I think that, I think back, my grandmother used to say all the time, I'm feeding people, not dogs. And she would only feed us 3 meals a day on a little saucer. She didn't have big plates. She hated big plates. She said because that was too much food, it was gluttony. And you could have two small snacks. But she cooked. She cooked those 3 meals. It was always fresh food when I stayed with her every summer. Always fresh food. And when I think back, she didn't eat a lot of beans.
Mm.
It wasn't until my parents decided to move to the big city, they adopted the behaviors of those who were there.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't think she ever cooked beans a day in her life. My
Wow.
grandmother, they didn't eat beans.
Wow.
So this conversation that you and I have had with Sterling today, I'm gonna have a long conversation with my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to look back at how she grew up, the foods that she ate. I know a little something about them, but not a whole lot about them. I know they ate peas because they grew peas, but they never ate beans.
Mm.
And all food was eaten in season.
Right. Right. There wasn't this eating everything all the time and eating so much of it, and the whole gluttony end of it. How
Right.
much of our problems come from that?
Well,
Much of a good thing.
too much of a good thing. I was thinking, Ron and I watched this documentary called Rotten, and they were talking about avocados, how
Mm-hmm.
they only grow a certain season in California. That's where we get most of our avocados from.
Mm-hmm.
So when NAFTA happened with Clinton, he opened up the market and we started getting flooded in with avocados, only the Haas avocados from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I eat avocados as a main source of protein and the good fats. And I was telling him after I saw it, I said, you know what? I need to look at that because should I be eating avocados year round?
Right.
Should we be doing these things?
Probably not, because something has to be out from nature, right? If they're growing them year round, what do they have to do to them to get them to grow out of season?
Well, could it be why? Well, we know glyphosate. Um, that's a big reason. Um, uh, um, a big reason why our bee population is dying off. But
Mm,
could it also be they're pollinating food that shouldn't be grown in certain seasons?
right. Mm.
It's just a lot for us to think
A lot of
about.
questions, right?
Lots of
Time to start
questions.
having some real conversations,
We need to start having
right?
some real conversations. And anyone in the audience who, if you have any questions and you know anyone who can bring light to this, we'd love to have them on the show.
Yes.
We'd
Yes.
love to talk to some, not just a nutritionist, but someone who can speak on behalf of indigenous eating.
Yes. Yes.
That's actually what we need.
That's what we need.
What is our staple? Because even when you look at the countries in Africa now, they've brought in so much. I mean, so much from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
What is truly their indigenous diet?
Right.
Why is it that we know that African women have one of the worst types of cancers, breast cancers, that no one is looking at? Triple negative.
Mm.
It's the fastest killer, the fastest growing. This is what they say. And yet, these are the women that have that triple negative. Because I remember when they told me about mine, they said, oh, well, you don't have the worst kind. It's not the most aggressive. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, African women have triple negative, and a lot of African American women have triple negative, and it's very aggressive.
Wow.
Yours is hormone driven. So you have to beg to wonder when they say things like that, and then all they offered me was standard care treatment. When they say things like that, do they know? And they're keeping the information from us?
They know a lot. They have a lot of data. I mean, they're in a position where they can look at all of this data and all of these trends, and they're not really sharing the good that could come from that with the public.
And that's
Right.
why we need people to do it for us.
Right. Right. So, the world is not going to go back to what we've known up till now. Like this, one way or another, changes upon us, right? But what role are we can't control. There's a bunch of stuff that we can't control in this, but there are some things we can control,
Well,
you
I
know?
think one of them is going back to agriculture. We were an agrarian society
Right.
till pretty much the 70s.
Right.
We were an agrarian society. Most of us grew our own food. I know my mother still had a garden, even though she got food from my grandparents, but she still had a garden in the backyard. I
Hmm.
grew up gardening, food. My mother didn't give 2 cents about a rose in the yard, but she did about the food in the back. And I was the one, I helped with that, but I also loved beautiful flowers. So I would plant flowers, and we were so poor. I used to say, I'm going to wrestle some roses. I got so good, my green thumb, I would go just clip pieces of people's roses because I love roses. And I would grow them in my front yard and grow any plant by a clip. And I never forget, my brother told me, that's called stealing, Sheila. I said, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm wrestling these roses. I'm making sure that they live. And I'll tell you a story. After Katrina, we went back that April of 2016. And you're not going to believe this, but all my flowers were dead in the front. And the only thing that had bloomed was one little short red rose. It was beautiful. I took a picture of it. So, just on that note, let's consider doing a show on how to grow food. Well, I mean, we need this. So anybody in the audience who want to share with us, we'd be glad to have you on. Talk about how to grow food in small confined spaces. The whole summer to grow food so that we have those staple foods, fresh foods that you're growing yourself.
Right. Right.
And in the meantime, you and I can go and look and see what Dr. Sabi said.
Yes. 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 All right. So don't forget to like our post. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, to find us on Facebook and on Instagram. We're also on Instagram. Okay. See you in our next episode.